It's Tuesday, 423. Krista's out. She's still recovering from 420 and or Easter.
I didn't think you would make that joke. I was going to.
She's still recovering from Easter. Or...
No, I think you got it.
We don't know.
We do know. Well, we suspect. But today we're going to do government and security, which are Krista's least favorite topics.
Yes.
So she'll be happy about that. And let's start off with a little China block. And what I like to do on a lot of the Level 1 news, I like to start off with Ajit Pai. Get everybody's juices flowing, because everybody hates him. But today, get the best of both worlds.
Ajit Pai proposes blocking China-owned telecom from the U.S. phone market. And I thought they were talking about Huawei when I read the headline. They're not. They're talking about China Telecom.
China Mobile, which is it China Telecom or China Mobile?
I think it was...
China Mobile.
Oh, okay.
Which, to me, like, I read this article and I was like, how would China think, with all the headlines, who in America would buy something called China Mobile? Turns out that's not what it is. What they want to do is they want to carry international mobile calls on their thing. And Ajit Pai says, dude, you're going to listen to those. we can't let you do that. We'll do that, but... Yeah.
It is a little disturbing that that's a pattern of stories. That's also a security story coming up, I think, is like, wait a minute, the thing they're complaining about is the thing that we do.
Every government is hypocritical by nature. But I don't think he can just, declare this. It has to be approved by somebody, but I can't imagine anybody in the government's going to stand in the way of this.
Well, I mean, I would feel, okay, is China Telecom going to handle international calls to China? At which point, I think that's moot. Or are they going to handle calls to other international countries like Germany and stuff? Because that's a different situation.
But here's, I think, the problem is you've got these Chinese dissidents who are living in America.
Oh, and you can track them down.
Right, yeah. And they've been known to use nefarious means to track down people who are blogging and stuff in America and go after their families.
Now, I seem to remember a news story from a couple of months ago where, like, American authorities were rerouting internet traffic through foreign countries in order to be able to surveil it.
Well, how about that time that we bribed Ecuador to arrest one man?
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of China and specifically Huawei, you said you suspected Huawei because why did you suspect that? U.S. government hates Huawei and they will not stop.
The U.S. intelligence says that Huawei funded by Chinese state security. This is the report. So Huawei has responded and are like, evidence. We need evidence or input. But, I mean, so like in America, we have the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, which is government funded, but they're all about open standards and security. And historically, they've been very good, but they've had some lapses, like the elliptic curve encryption. So like if I were China and looking at that, it would be like, why did the NIST interfere with why did the intelligence community interfere with the NIST's dual elliptic curve encryption standard? That's like what Huawei is being accused of here is literally what happened with the elliptic curve encryption.
This is supposedly the evidence that everybody's been saying to produce. They're saying they've got the evidence.
But it's in a secret court, which is no way to conduct business. Look, everybody is like ham-fistedly using technology. We just need to bring it out into the open. In order for people to actually be more secure, we can't be going about building backdoors into everybody else's stuff because everybody's going to be able to detect everybody else's backdoors. I mean, come on.
We talk about the long list of stuff that China does steal from us, from military secrets to aircraft secrets to telecommunications, copyrights, patents. The list is huge, but maybe this is one I hadn't heard of before. Cancer research.
Scientists have been fired from a cancer research center after being accused of stealing research for China. Like 5 people were involved, 3 people were dismissed, 2 aren't going to fight it, 1 is. It's a weird situation.
But the Chinese government's response to this, I don't know if it's the Chinese government, it might have been like lawyers representing these guys or whatever, but I can't help but agree with it, which is, how does cancer research, like, why isn't that just something you would share? Because they're kind of admitting, hey, this is our product. We are going to sell this. This is not to help humankind. Chinese people don't need this because they can't afford it. This is for Westerners because we're going to sell it to them. And Legally they have grounds, but it's such a disgusting thing. It's like, no, no, no. The Chinese can't have our cancer research. This is our cancer research. You did it wrong.
That is a little disturbing. Although, isn't the whole point of research to like share the data?
Yeah, that's their point. They're like, what? You're accusing us of stealing something like, why this is good for all mankind. If we take this and then we take it further, everybody wins, except for the pharmaceutical companies that are probably funding the research. So, that's a little bit of, like, I'm usually a diehard capitalist, but when it comes to some things like that, you do have to sit back and be like, wait a minute. Are we holding back cancer research to make money? Is that something that we're doing now?
Yeah, it turns out.
Well, speaking, we talked earlier about Ecuador and that time that we gave them, what was it, $4 billion?
Yeah.
To arrest one man. And now some interesting things. This headline says admits, but they didn't admit anything. It's just that sealed documents became unsealed.
Yeah, the U.S. government admits it doesn't know if Assange cracked a password for Manning. So the FBI agent testified that Assange offered to help Manning break a password on an account so that it would be more difficult to trace the leaks back to him. But the U.S. government confirmed that it didn't really know if Assange had gone through with that. And so this is apparently the conspiracy to commit computer abuse that that they're charging, one of the charges that they're charging him with, which seems really like they're really reaching.
Watch those pronouns, bro.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so it kind of just points out that once they figured out they didn't have him for what they thought they had him for, they just piled a bunch of other crap onto it. I mean, nothing's going to stop them from taking down Assange.
But do we is there no why can't we just why?
Because if you embarrass the U.S. government or the alphabet agencies, you will be destroyed. And case in point,
security researcher MalwareTech pleads guilty. What? He called these charges BS. So he could face up to 10 years in prison. Although I'm not usually like when there's a plea deal. This is a plea deal. Usually there's a maximum, and it's hard for me to imagine that he entered into a plea deal with a maximum of 10 years actually on the table.
Well, he had 8 charges. He pled guilty to 2. Pleaded. I like pled, but every couple of publication uses pleaded. So I guess that's correct.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm against it. Anyway, I imagine all 8 would have been like the rest of your life, and you're gambling with a jury and a judge to understand some really complex ideas.
Yeah.
So somebody probably sat him down. This is another situation where if you look into it, the original charge that they arrested him and questioned him about was proven to be false, or they couldn't prosecute him on, or some kind of technicality because he didn't really do it. So what do? Just invented more stuff. And there he goes.
It's going to be rough. He seems to be very carefully guarding his words. I mean, he made a statement on Twitter and some other stuff, but I imagine he is at the mercy of the prosecutor at this point. So he's going to not say much.
Yeah.
Although reading between the lines, even if he is responsible for the Kronos banking malware, other actual criminals have taken it to the nth degree. So, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
3,000 hours of community service is a lot different than 10 years in prison.
It's a long time. I suspect 10 was the maximum for those 2 charges. I bet he'll get like 4 or 5.
That's still rough.
And, and he'll have to, not come back to America or something like that. Of course, it doesn't. I mean, borders don't matter to what he does. So. Well, speaking of, let's move from some people who probably have been railroaded and are on the wrong side of justice to someone who is definitely should be on the wrong side of the Justice Department, but probably won't be because he's very powerful and everything is being done to protect him.
Once again, the level 1 juxtaposition. Facebook is fighting to shield Zuckerberg from punishment in U.S. privacy probe. Now, the FTC is looking into making Zuckerberg personally responsible for all of this stuff. And so that's the shielding that they're talking about here. Arguably, you think the stuff that Zuckerberg has done is worse than what MalwareTech bro did?
I don't know. I mean, well, in light of foreshadowing, the security section or the social media section of the news, which won't be today, unfortunately. Yeah, pretty bad. But I would blame Zuckerberg on more of a meta level, which is like, Facebook is just this cancer on society. But that's akin to blaming gun manufacturers. I mean, people make the choice to take that drug.
People make the choice to share that data with Facebook.
You got to let them, right? So, I don't know. But they're definitely scared, you can tell.
Yeah.
Like the big data companies or big tech companies are finally getting a little bit spooked because... And this is probably just leverage to get a bigger fine out of them.
Yeah. I think also shareholders might embrace the whole blame Zuckerberg thing in order to wrest control of the company from him.
Yeah.
Because if everybody is... Like, usually the way that it works with a company in America is you have the entire company acting in concert to do something hideously evil, but no one person is to blame. It's everyone working together to be hideously evil.
To him, I bet that is just slightly less bad than chill time.
Yeah.
Because that's his whole identity. And if he loses that, what is he?
Yeah.
He's just, a robot. Just back to being a regular robot. He can't take that. The Department of Justice, again, I think as we're heading up to 2020, I think like you really want to put that pin on your lapel that says, I fought the big tech companies. That's going to be a big campaign thing. And this might have something to do with that.
The T-Mobile Sprint merger is in danger of being rejected by the DOJ. Now, I'm pretty sure that the DOJ, just like a year or two ago, said, hey, Sprint and T-Mobile aren't in any danger of competing with AT&T or Verizon. We will rubber stamp that merger, no problem.
And the thing that they cite, which is absolutely true, lack of competition. Obviously, when you have such a small number of telecommunication companies, and you take one out of the way, that's pretty simple mathematics. That will be bad for competition.
But if T-Mobile and Sprint want to go toe-to-toe with the likes of AT&T and Verizon, they have to merge. At least that's their argument, because there's no way that they could either one grow to the point that they could compete or whatever.
But that argument never stops being true as you pull slices of the pie away.
Yeah.
So that reasoning always ends in one.
One mobile carrier, the government mobile carrier.
The China way. They have the ZTE and Huawei. A lot of people say that's all synonymous with Chinese government, but splitting hairs. Now let's switch down to some state news. And Utah, you don't usually hear about Utah being like spearheading the digital revolution. But they've done an amazing thing.
This is a big deal. Utah has banned police from searching digital data without a warrant. So this is closing a Fourth Amendment loophole. We talk about this loophole all the time where the government can't collect data on citizens, but if you voluntarily give your data to Google, the government can request that data from Google and no Fourth Amendment violation has occurred. Well, in Utah, they put the kibosh on that. And Utah is the only state in the United States that's like that. The other 49 states don't put any restrictions.
You adopted that word now?
What?
Kibosh.
Oh, kibosh.
Didn't you say last week you never heard it before?
Kibosh. No, I'd never heard it pronounced as kibosh.
Oh.
I'd always heard it pronounced as
I Googled
kibosh.
it. It's kibosh. This is when you're like, if you get location data from Google, that's what this is. So you can't just do that anymore. You have to have a warrant in Utah. Google probably likes that.
Yeah.
Because
people won't get scared.
Yeah, they don't want you to be scared of using their product. Now, there is kind of a loophole, and it's maybe not the biggest, but it will be abused, and that is imminent danger.
Yeah, kidnapping, stuff like that.
Yeah, but they don't spell out exactly what that is, I think. It's just the judge interprets imminent danger.
Yeah.
To what constitutes imminent danger.
But they still have to get the warrant after the fact, so that'll be good maybe.
You can't use it in court.
Yeah.
But as we've learned with Google location data, they almost never use it in court.
Yeah.
They use it to get other evidence.
Parallel construction.
Yeah, so.
It's like, we don't want to talk about where this came from.
Remember, now, okay, so speaking of states doing amazing things, how was it, 6 months ago? Maybe longer? We were like, wow, New York really did something amazing. They put their foot down and they said, Charter, you're lying to people. You're charging hidden fees. You're doing all this garbage. Your service sucks. You're out. You're gone.
I remember that. We were excited.
They never really left. And now
Charter has struck a deal to remain in New York. They've got until 2021 to build out their infrastructure. Charter, for their part, says that they do not admit any wrongdoing and that these infrastructure improvements were already scheduled and this is nothing to see here and move along, citizen.
No fine, no admission of wrongdoing, just double the amount that they were going to put into building out infrastructure. So, and they have until 2021, I think.
Foreshadowing, Level 1 News Report 2021. They're out!
Yeah, really. Or somebody new is in government at that time.
Yeah.
And they make a cozy deal with them.
Yeah, they literally do not care.
Now, they did talk about, foreshadowing again, with the Netflix deal, some of the people in New York are really feeling the heat because they lost Amazon.
Oh.
And like powerful people are like, what are you doing chasing business out in New York? So they might have been like, oh, you know what? Come back in, Charter, please. Go. We need those tax dollars.
Our next story makes me very depressed on a personal level.
Yeah, this hits home for us because, I mean, this wasn't going to affect us, but maybe you thought
someday
it would continue to spread, but no.
Google Fiber has to pay nearly $4 million to Louisville in an exit deal. It's $3.96 million, and that is to restore public rights-of-way and utility infrastructure to its original condition, because Google experimented with this new micro-trenching thing in Louisville, Kentucky, where they would only dig a trench like 2 or 3 inches deep and put a fiber optic cable, because those fiber optic cables really aren't very large. They don't carry any electricity. If somebody hits one, it's not really a big deal, except it takes out internet for people. But if you get enough redundant infrastructure in place that you monitor it, maybe it's not a big deal. Well, the grand experiment failed, citing problems with the infrastructure and also regulatory problems. Google has pulled out. It's just not profitable. And from the article, it seems like only 30 to 40,000 homes at most were serviceable. Very small number, very small area of Louisville. So this was not well planned or well executed.
$4 billion to scoop out that little bit of garbage in there and put more pavement in its place.
$4 million.
I thought it was billion. I thought that seemed a little weird.
$4 million is not really a lot.
Well, if you only had 30,000 homes to go to, then the darkest day in the United Kingdom. It's been forewarned, and people thought, "Nah, it's crazy. It's never going to happen." But now you can mark your calendar. Go right now on your phone, or if you use a paper calendar, put a big X on it, big scary X. July 15th.
July 15th. I'm going to change the headline of The Guardian here a little bit. Online pornography age checks to be mandatory in UK from the 15th of July. You're going to have to get all your porn from Reddit, because Reddit is one of the websites that has been accepted. Like a lot of the places.
Facebook.
Yeah. Well, I don't,
I mean, they don't do porn, but all the big social media sites were excluded because even though they don't do porn, they could accidentally, somebody could post it. And
Reddit definitely
doesn't catch it. Of course, you can't go to Tumblr now. But this has been really lampooned because it's going to be trivial to get around.
I really like the politicians where they're like, we've balanced individual privacy with our complete lack of understanding of how the internet works. It's just, come on, guys.
But even then, the idea is that it protects children from pornography. That's the only thing that you can say. I mean, it's
got some bad news for you.
Morality thing, but this is the unintended consequence will be incredible, as all of the places where you didn't usually have porn will now be covered in porn because you're pushing people out of the normal channels of porn. It's nonsensical.
Yeah. Your only hope for children on the internet is literally to just give them their own internet that is highly curated, a walled garden, if you will.
But imagine the
and that's
predation that would happen on the child's internet.
Yeah.
You have to spend more money keeping the creeps out of the child internet than keeping the children out of the regular internet.
Yeah.
People should raise their own kids. Yeah. It's your problem.
Yeah.
Your children are your problem. And you know what? Life's going to suck. You're going to have to watch them as they play and get on the internet. And it's a bad time. So don't have children.
Remember before, in an age before the internet, when it was like, oh, these books in the library, they contain controversial things. I'm talking about like To Kill a Mockingbird, for example. And now it's the internet. And so it's like, oh, it's different when it's the internet. It's like, yeah, legit. from a literary standpoint, it's like, no, we can't ban books. That's terrible. But when the internet's involved, no, that seems fine.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit easier to keep copies of The Tropic of Cancer out of libraries than it is to keep people off from sites on the internet. It's just a different world. But whatever. I'm sure that some enterprising individual, maybe it's VPN companies, maybe it's just people hawking USB drives on the street, are going to make a lot of money from this.
It's amazing. It's like, where are you going? Francois. It's like, oh, I've got to go to the alley. I'm meeting someone, and it's just got a trench coat full of USB sticks.
I'll bet you that the UK police will have like little data readers and phones. And they're running. It's like, you got a license for that, mate? And read your USB. There will be a whole police unit committed to scanning your USB drive. It's like, bend that USB drive.
Privacy advocates always use the same identity to get their online porn license. It's like, this guy's registered for 200,000 licenses. What's going on?
The other bit of European news, it's not really a surprise, but we should just note that the next step has been taken. Take your hat off, press F to pay respects.
The European Commission gives its final seal of approval to the copyright law overhaul. This is both the link tax and the other shenanigans that Europe has been up to forever. This was we said this was going to happen. This is basically rubber stamp.
I don't think there was any chance this wasn't going to happen after the last vote.
I like a lot of the people in our comments from past news said that mandatory content filtering was not really part of this anymore. And that French authorities were saying that as well. But immediately after, not this, but the last episode, they were like, all right, let's talk about the mandatory content filters. And it was a complete 180. That was a surprise, not to us, but to some people.
Bad time. Bad time. I mean, you can't click on links. You can't get porn. Okay. Of course, that's just the UK, I guess. I wonder if the EU will adopt the porn filter.
I think they're going to go back to Euronet. We're going to have the internet and Euronet. And
Russia's got their own now.
Yeah, we're going to have a passport.
China's going to get their own.
Yeah. Well, they kind of already do behind the Great Firewall, because there are a lot of sites that are not reachable from Western countries that are behind the Great Firewall because they have an internal IP address.
Seems like a good thing for the internet. Split it up like that. I mean, what could go wrong? And up to the Great White North of Canada, they have an interesting legal battle going on as Google seems to be attempting to build a town.
Sidewalk Labs' ambitious smart city plans now face a legal battle. So Sidewalk Labs, that's actually Google, it turns out, or it's a Google subsidiary.
They call them a sister company.
And they're doing a lot of interesting things in terms of like data collection.
I think you mispronounced Orwellian.
Well, it's really bizarre. So like, kind of a side tangent, but related to this. One of the things that Sidewalk Labs came up with is a thing for city planners to use. And so like if you're in a park, normally like a city planner would just go to a park with a clipboard and make a note of how people are using the park. It's like, okay, there's a middle-aged woman laying in the grass. There's two people sitting on a bench. There's somebody biked through on a bicycle. And so just whatever they could observe, and they would just write it down, not anything to do with anybody's identity, but, who they are, and they would guesstimate their age and their gender and maybe their race and some other things, and, compile this. And there are some really famous studies that do that. Well, Sidewalk Labs, one of the things they made was an application to help researchers do that. But it seems kind of weird because Google already has literally all of that information. If you have a mobile phone and you're using any Android apps, or you're using Android or any Google apps on your iDevice, Google literally already has that data and is using it. And if you don't think so, go to Google Maps and put in a restaurant, and it will tell you how busy the restaurant is right now, which is based on people's mobile phone data. So imagine that scaled up to an entire city and using that for planning. That's kind of what they're talking about here.
Well, more importantly, this is going to be augmented with basically tracking everything that you do while you're here. And it's a part of Toronto, waterfront Toronto, and license plate readers, cameras, microphones, anything that you can imagine to track what's going on in the guise of making a better city, making a smart city, as they would say.
But technically it's all public. But when you aggregate all of this, something sinister happens.
Well, and so the people are saying, hey, I don't necessarily live here, but I live near here, and you're basically invading my privacy by doing all this. I might go there. And it's not up to Google to decide about the privacy of Toronto, the people of Toronto. And nobody asked us if we wanted this. So some people are suing. I don't know if I like their chances, because you got to think that there's going to be a ton of money poured into Toronto from Google. And people are probably going to like it for the most part. It'll probably be clean. It'll probably be crime-free. And all that data being sucked out will be making Google a ton of money, but nobody will realize it, really.
And a lot of the stuff that Google was talking about is technically public information already. The difference is that it's a top-down organization where literally every piece of information that you could collect from all kinds of disparate sources will be collected by a single entity.
And there was a woman who they hired as like the privacy consultant. She has quit in protest because she required anonymization of every data source before storage. Like that was her line in the sand. If there's any way that you can match these up somehow and track individual people and what they're doing and where they're going, that cannot happen. And Google was like, yeah, we're going to do that. So she quit.
We're literally already doing that.
Yeah, so it kind of shows you where Google's heart is on this thing. They see all that delicious data and feeding that into the ad system, and wow, that's just a dream come true.
It's like someday the algorithm is going to be like, Timmy is considering the following large purchases. The algorithm says if we give Timmy a mint chocolate chip ice cream, the next time he goes to Central Park, he will purchase the Tesla Model S. It's like dispatch the concierge to get him the, chocolate chip whatever. It's fine.
The drone.
The Amazon drone.
The refrigerated drone. This one, much like the EU one, this is another just rubber stamp. We talked about this before, but Russia is definitely doing their internet controls.
This is not the same thing that we reported on last week. This is another one. So the noose tightens further, if you will. The Russian parliament has adopted an internet controls bill. So the last bill was Russia needs the ability to shut down the internet in the event of something crazy happening. This is much more fine-grained controls over what people inside Russia experience in terms of content from the internet.
Well, you have to route all Russian traffic through these nodes in Russia. So basically, spy nodes, where they will observe all traffic, they admit it's going to slow things down, could cause unexpected problems. We're doing it anyway. The excuse they use, which is kind of an eerie echo of the U.S. government, is we have to protect Russia from the U.S. trying to take us off the internet. Whereas we have to protect everybody.
Spooky, doesn't it?
Yeah, we protect from China. Russia protects from us. It's a circle.
Oh, no.
We've always been at war. Moving into security news. What do you have with every security news? Unsecured database. This week is no different. This week, it's Mexico. Well, it's not actually in Mexico. It was a Mexican embassy.
This hacker has dumped thousands of sensitive Mexican embassy documents online, and he tried to contact the embassy to say, hey, your stuff's insecure. They ignored him. So what do? You post it on the internet.
This was in Guatemala. There's an example of some of the stuff that they've got. That seems important. Doesn't seem like something you want on the internet.
That's crazy.
How about a passport?
Oh, obviously.
We've got that. So yeah, this guy wanted some money. He contacted him. He was like, hey, what's your bounty policy? Not only did they not give him a bounty, they ignored him. So he put it online. The web service that he used to put it online, the hosting service has taken it down, but it was up for some amount of time.
Oh, it's already been replicated to the darknet. No worries.
I'm sure, yeah. And here's an interesting, it's always amazing when Microsoft has massive security issues and they are just really dumb mistakes. It's entertaining, but also terrifying.
Unexpected protection added to Microsoft Edge subverts IE security. Permissions that Edge added to download files break important security features. So you can read a file from the browser. It'll just arbitrarily upload a file from your file system.
Yeah, it's an XML thing. And it doesn't work on, I think Windows 10 is safe, if you go back to 7, 8, some of those, then, and if you don't have Edge, IE will actually protect itself. If you do have Edge, then Edge introduces a different quote unquote security fix that undoes the IE fix and allows that to work. It's a very complicated thing, but obviously don't use those browsers.
Microsoft is trying to take pity on web developers that have to support IE11 because you can call the IE Edge rendering engine from IE11 depending on what version of IE11 you have, but the implementation is not perfect as evidenced by this issue.
Remember the NSA tools that got leaked? That was fun, right?
Oh, it's an ongoing treasure trove of fun, yes.
Well, it's not just America that falls in the crosshairs of these people. How about Iran?
Source code of Iranian cyber-espionage tools have been leaked on Telegram. So these are apt34 hacking tools. And yeah, it's on Telegram since last month. So you can download these and have the same tools that the Iranian government has, because why not?
I don't know how much of it was flag waving or how much of it was legitimate, but everybody they interviewed about this or had quotes on were like, yeah, this is kind of the kindergarten of hacking. It's nothing like our beautiful NSA tools. Those were amazing.
The criminal organizations are still using those to wreak havoc. It's just, when are they going to bring that? Like, they're bringing the MalwareTech guy down for the Kronos thing. When are they bringing the NSA people down for those tools? Because those tools are much worse.
This guy also, so there's the list of some of the stuff they had. They also have lists of targets here, which is interesting. A lot of other Middle Eastern targets, which I guess maybe I don't know much about Middle Eastern espionage, but you would think the specter of Iran that they paint for us would all be them going after us. But no, it's all United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and stuff like that, which I guess they're our ally. But that's embarrassing. Also got some username and passwords that they stole with that stuff. So
they need their own internet, and this won't happen.
Oh, I should have put this next to the Edge article, because once again, this is Microsoft shooting itself in the foot.
McAfee joins Sophos, Avira, and Avast. The latest Windows update breaks them all. So basically, Microsoft's got an update. They didn't test it with any third-party antivirus programs because Microsoft doesn't test anymore. They fired all their testers like 10 years ago, and Windows is getting to be as unstable as a moose on rollerblades. It's very bad. The worst case scenario here is you're just going to get like a blue screen boot loop type thing. Best case scenario, your antivirus is not actually working.
Yeah, you can boot safe mode, get around it, turn off your antivirus. That's what they suggest, which is interesting. Remember that time they were like, there might be a risk that the encryption can be broken, so you should stop encrypting your emails. That's one of those kinds of solutions. But the Microsoft and Ars Technica kind of surmise this might be true. It may be that this was insecure all along, and the antivirus companies were kind of taking a little shortcut there because they knew about it. And this actually is something that they should fix. So,
still, it would have been nice to. It's like, hey guys, we fixed the vulnerability in the kernel. Here's a memo. Like, we know you guys are using it. Can you guys like not do that in the next version or two? Thanks.
Or even, here's a preview. You want to test it? Make sure that your antivirus works.
Yeah, no.
That'd be something. I guess technically though, Microsoft just wants you to use their thing. So
Microsoft fired the guy inside Microsoft that would have emailed their people to be like, hey, test this. It's been replaced by the bot. It's not very good.
Krista, it's too bad she's not here. She is a big consumer of Weather Channel content. And as she has admitted on multiple occasions, total victim of the clickbait that is what the Weather Channel serves these days. And so this may have affected her, although I think she consumes it online.
Wall Street Journal has this. The computer attack knocks the Weather Channel off the air. It was a ransomware attack. They were down for a couple hours, which is a pretty quick recovery. But one of their systems was connected to the internet, and that was tied into their broadcast system. And so they couldn't do anything. They were paralyzed. You
got to think they paid that. I didn't read this article because paywall, Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal, you got to give it up to their paywall. It's the only one that beats me. I can work around the rest of them. But the one I read was like ZDNet or something, and they did not say whether or not they paid it. But you kind of get the impression the speed with which it was recovered,
yeah,
they paid it.
They're just like, okay, sounds good.
I would love to know what they paid.
I don't, it's hard to get Bitcoin that quickly anymore. Coinbase makes you wait forever, and the others, it's just the exchanges are not great.
Yeah, but who owns Weather Channel? I think it's a bigger entertainment company, and I'm sure they've got a little wallet somewhere just for this occasion.
They really have stepped up. I mean, the Weather Channel is watching some of the stuff. They've stepped up what they're doing with graphics and things. Like they've got that visualizer thing where like the host is like inside a 3D environment as far as the camera, and like the camera will move and the environment moves. But it was all like, hey, in New Orleans when the levees failed, this is what's going to happen with the water, and like all the houses were underwater and the traffic lights were underwater. It was a very effective demonstration. I can see why Krista would click the clickbait.
Yeah, but as far as the TV channel, how are you going to compete? What is it, like weather on the 8s or something or other? So any time that ends in an 8, they give you the weather, as opposed to the one that's in my pocket. That's whenever I want. So, yeah. I think they have to go to that sensational stuff because, old people are like, oh, pretty pictures. And finally, when we talk about, again, leaks, unsecured databases, you think about what's the worst that can happen. So maybe one of the worst was the ones where the secret agents got their names leaked.
Oh, yeah.
Because literally people get killed. Medical is obviously bad. Children's stuff, that makes you kind of cringe a little bit. But this one is particularly bad because these are people who really would like to keep this a secret and are trying to do the right thing.
Patient names, treatments, and other stuff has leaked among millions of rehab records. So this is exposed data of 150,000 people. A lot of people were in this database more than one time, but it's really just sort of data points in their medical history. So things like rehab.
Yeah, I think rehab tends to have recidivism
Yeah.
more than other kinds of medical treatment. So certainly, if you're looking for employment, I don't think, is rehab like a public record type thing? It's probably not, because it would be a stigma.
No, you don't even have to disclose it to an employer. So like people may lose their jobs over this because their employer will flag it. Probably some unscrupulous background check companies will scoop this up and add it to their background check database. So when you run a background check on employee X, it's like, oh, there you go.
Well, you get the official report, and then the phone rings. It's like, oh, hey, off the record?
Yeah.
Yeah, heroin. So that's unfortunate, but just goes to show you in the world of cloud computing, nothing is secret for long.
And that's it for this episode of the news. Tomorrow we've got what?
Business and probably robot or social media. Depends on which one's shorter.
I'm really excited to talk about the Qualcomm versus Apple thing. That's going to be amazing. Don't miss it. It's April 24th, and we've got a big old batch of business news coming at you, but also social media.
Which is just Facebook. It's getting worse and worse, but Facebook is so newsworthy. I think they do so many stupid things. You got to talk about them. But first, the massive news, and surely you've all already heard of it. Maybe not if you've been living under a rock, but not since the end of the Cold War, the fall of those dirty Soviets, have we seen something that have been the two superpowers finally ending conflict. I don't think we've seen anything like that since then. And that, of course, is Apple and Qualcomm.
Apple versus Qualcomm. I wouldn't say that they're hugging it out. But,
well, I wouldn't say that about the Cold War either.
Apple has said that Qualcomm's tech was no good, but in private communications, it was the best. So this is a WAPO article. There's also a pretty good article from CNBC and some other articles around the internet.
Everybody wrote about this.
Yeah. 2017, it was originally, like, this all stems from insanity going all the way back to like 2016, 2017. Apple and Qualcomm have been fighting hardcore. I don't know where Qualcomm got the documents, but the documents that Qualcomm has been submitting in this court case are just unbelievable. And it looking at the stuff that the Qualcomm CEO has said to the press, like, remember when he said, I think we're pretty close to working this out with Apple, and it was just very calm and collected, and then like Tim Cook retorted very, like, almost within hours. It was like, no, we haven't spoken in 3 quarters. Why would we be working it out? Well, it turns out that Qualcomm got their hands on a bunch of documents and internal communications from the engineers, and the engineers were saying that Qualcomm's modems were the best. And a lot of really interesting stuff has come out of this court case. I mean, industry pundits were already aware of this, but like Intel also had 5G modems, but the 5G modems were 30% slower. Remember, the whole like Qualcomm could do a gigabit on LTE on 4G, but Intel could only do 600 megabit. So when Apple launched their iPhone that had the modem, the fancy pants modem in it, they capped the performance of Qualcomm's modem at 600 megabit, which was actually a violation of their agreement with Qualcomm, and they submitted documents to that effect. So Apple, if you look at the court documents, has been hideously evil, like shockingly evil with all of this the whole time.
The big sticking point was you pay Qualcomm for their patents if you do business with them. Apple didn't like that, but from everything I've read, I didn't see anything about that going away. So it seems like Qualcomm got basically everything they wanted.
Yeah.
And there was also a sum of money that will be paid from Apple to Qualcomm. We don't know what that was. I'm sure there were several zeros.
It is undisclosed. That's the really classy thing with Qualcomm this whole time is like, there wasn't really a lot of grandstanding from the Qualcomm CEO. He's just like, if you're just doing this for negotiation or business or whatever, that's fine. But here is the price. This is what it is. This is what we charge the industry. It is not more than it should be. It is not less than it should be. It is what it is. This is what we think it's worth. Qualcomm actually ended up, laying off like 1,500 people because of Apple's grandstanding and antics. I mean, at one point, Qualcomm submitted confidential Qualcomm-only information from Qualcomm engineers to Intel engineers to try to get Intel to shore up their product, which is a violation, a pretty severe and egregious violation of their terms for using this technology.
Won't go into the current batch of iPhones in production. It's too late for that, but by I think they said 2020 or 2021, it'll be all Qualcomm. Should be good for Apple. Should be good for Qualcomm. Should be good for the consumer because, less fines. You would assume maybe that'll trickle down to a little bit for you. I can't think of anybody who's really going to be, a big loser in this situation. Can you?
Oh, wait. Intel has said that it's going to exit the 5G phone modems market just hours after the Apple and Qualcomm settlement. So this is probably a large part of what was driving things, but also I think in no small part the fact that Apple submitted stuff to Intel and was acting in, to me, the stuff that has come out in this court case shows that Apple is acting in bad faith. And Intel so far behind Qualcomm on the 5G side of things that it can't catch up. And even if Intel were able to catch up, there would be that specter of having used Qualcomm proprietary information to make their own product better. I think it probably makes sense with where Intel is in the semiconductor manufacturing market for them to exit. This is a big deal.
Good time to raise your prices if you're Qualcomm.
Yeah, well, I have a feeling that those prices, you were saying this like, this is going to be good for everybody, but it's like Apple demands those profit margins, those crazy, crazy profit margins. So they're probably going to pass that cost onto the consumer and say it's Qualcomm's fault because that's what they were doing the whole time. Apple was literally like one of the things. I thought we had a story on this, but if not, I don't know. This should be the next story. But it was Apple was buying cheap technology patents, like patent portfolios, to try to say that Qualcomm's royalty demands were out of line with the industry norms, but it was really Apple manipulating things. So, it's just, you might not be surprised, but I was surprised that Apple was that evil. That was like hideously evil, shockingly evil.
If this has changed your mind and you say, all right, now I feel comfortable going out, getting an iPhone, even though I have to have the Intel modem, or maybe you're a big Intel fan and you're like, I've got to get the last generation Intel modem before they stop making them.
It's a collector's item because the battery life is so if you're in the New York area, you probably want to order that online. Apple's Fifth Avenue store has been having a bed bug problem. It turns out New York City's got a bed bug problem, but the pictures from this were scary. So like the employee locker section, all the employees are just keeping all their stuff in garbage bags. So yeah, it's like, there's a lot of bed bugs. We don't know what's going on.
Those are garbage bags that they were told when they came to work and they were like, there's bed bugs. We must get out of here. They were told, no, here's some garbage bags. Just put your stuff in garbage bags and get back to work. And of course, didn't tell the public. And you got to think, the Apple hipsters coming in there, they would not be happy about bed bugs. So, yeah, bad news. And perhaps another shot in the arm for Apple is going to be these headlines coming out of Samsung, which are...
It's going to be a shot in the dark or shot in the arm for Huawei because they've got the other foldable display, but maybe not.
But I think this will turn people off to them in general.
Galaxy Fold review units are failing left and right with disastrous display issues. So this is the folding phone. So I don't... there's probably something to this, but it is really hard to sort through this with a signal-to-noise ratio. So, like, digging into this... Marquez accidentally tried to pull there's like a plastic film over the screen because it's not exactly glass because glass doesn't bend. So like there's this plastic film thing on the screen and he's like, oh, that's a protective thing that I can remove and put my own protector on there. No, that was part of the display. So he ruined his. But there are other people, and there was another reviewer that did that like tried to pull the film off and ruined their phone. But some of the people that are having fold problems didn't try to pull the screen protector off. Like lumps formed in the display, and then soon after the lumps led to the display failing. So it's really hard to suss out what's going on with this other than the phone definitely has a reduced durability.
But even if these people are using them incorrectly, based on the number of people that it is, and plus these are all like, early review units or whatever.
Yeah.
These aren't the kind of people who are going to make dumb mistakes with a phone. Now, you could say that peeling off the film is a dumb mistake, but every phone you've ever got your hands on has a protective film that you peel off.
Yeah.
So to have one that it's like, don't peel this off, it speaks to the fragility. And like, I think the foldable phones were rushed out.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ready for foldable phones. I don't think there's a demand for them. And what are those, like $2,000?
Yeah, Samsung's got to beat Huawei, though.
Well, they didn't. I think this is more embarrassing than the exploding phones.
Is it like a rush to the marathon, but like the guy, he doesn't run across the finish line, he trips face first into the finish line? I've seen that a few times in like the Olympic thing where it's like the sprint runner.
Well, no, it's more like he pushes himself that last 2 miles, but he's pissing blood for like 4 weeks, and his kidneys shut down, and he can't run in the next marathon. It's
we made it, and it's like, hold on there.
Yeah,
never open your folding phone.
It's good. Well, it's maybe not a direct comparison, but 5GE.
Oh yeah,
it's like, let's be the first to do it, but let's just do it so badly that we become the laughingstock of the industry. So, Tesla news. And I can't do it. I can't pass up a story about a Tesla that burst into flames.
Now, Tesla vehicle bursts into flames and burns for hours in Monroeville. Now, that's not the story because, in before gas fires are super common. You'd never hear about a car that runs on gas catching on fire. The news story here is that the fire department pulled the fuse out of the battery and were told that it was safe. And it burst into flames hours later with the batteries being disconnected and the fuse out.
But the bigger part of that story is that this car was wrecked in February. So this has been sitting on a lot, waiting for salvage, waiting for the Tesla guy to come. And it wasn't the fire department, it was the Tesla guy.
Oh.
So the Tesla guy shows up, says, I'm here to secure this battery, pulls a fuse. 2 hours later, this thing is a smoldering inferno.
Well, that's bad.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. So,
did he also stab the battery with a screwdriver while he was there?
I don't know. Maybe that fuse was the only thing holding it together at that point. It's like when the doctors, you go in and they cure one thing and then they find the cancer. That's a common story.
Well, good news, it's only a kidney infection, but you also have rectal cancer.
Yeah, so it's too bad. Although it is statistically, there's not that many fires, but this is the second or third one that's happened after the wreck, and it's just been sitting in a salvage yard somewhere.
Yeah,
which,
that's definitely unusual.
I mean, if you're salvaging Teslas, store them outdoors.
I guess the lesson here is that after every wreck, you're just going to have to disconnect the battery pack and pop it out and store it somewhere else.
There was another story I didn't put in here, but some guy's garage burned down, and there was a Tesla and another car in there. He's blaming the Tesla. Of course, there's no proof. Anyway, because...
Good luck with the insurance claim.
Could have been an electrical fire unrelated to the car. So that's why I didn't put it in there. But still, when you hear stories like this, that gets in people's heads, and they're like, maybe I don't want a fireball. Yeah. But some good news for Musk and amongst his burning Teslas, an excellent space launch.
SpaceX has lost the
Oh, these are out of order. They're out of order. Oh, wait, no, they're not. Oh, I didn't put the... Okay, so we assume everything was good up until this. That's the point. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So SpaceX has lost the center core of its Falcon Heavy rocket due to choppy seas. So this is, I think, the second... So Falcon Heavy's got 3 stages that land independently. One of them slammed into the ocean, but the other 2 landed successfully on a concrete pad. So this was attempting to land on a drone ship, and it did. It landed successfully. So Falcon Heavy was totally recovered. It was fine. The drone ship was on its way back with the center stage when rough seas made it fall over. Now I know what you're thinking. It needs to have a clamp or some sort of locking mechanism. It does. The drone ship totally does. But the center rocket is different from the rockets on the edge, and so the locking mechanism is different. And the locking mechanism for the center part of the rocket was not ready yet.
Maybe something to get ready before you do the launch.
Yeah. It's in the ocean now.
They did say they were thinking they might be able to salvage some of the stuff out of it. I guess they're going to just fish it out. I don't know. But they claim that will not affect them going forward with further Falcon Heavy launches.
It's cool. We got more.
They'll have a new centerpiece, but they'll reuse those boosters again. However, the crew carrying Dragon capsule, maybe not so much.
It was undergoing a test fire, and the smoke was seen for miles as the SpaceX Crew Dragon suffers an anomaly at Cape Canaveral. So the Tesla spokespeople were very, very careful to constantly refer to whatever happened as an anomaly. We don't know.
No, there's a video. There's a Twitter video. It exploded. That's the anomaly. It's like, there's black smoke, so you can't really see, but it seems like at 1 second, there's the capsule, and the next second, there's no more capsule. The little legs are still there, but no more capsule.
What?
So,
that doesn't sound like an anomaly. That sounds like a catastrophic failure.
And they were going to test or display, they have this cool system where if they have to abort the launch, the capsule's got its own little fuel system to launch them to safety.
Is that what happened?
I don't know if it was a failure of that or whatever, but kind of ironic that that's what they were going to show off.
Well, I mean, if it quote unquote exploded, it might be that it launched to safety, so that it might be somewhere else.
But based on this explosion, I don't think the crew would have launched to safety. Survived. I mean, we might have eventually buried them.
we found a leg.
We talked about New York City in the last episode and how some of the politicians are probably catching a lot of flack from the rich people, the business owners, and the people who want to bring big business to New York because they ran off Amazon. And you don't say no to Amazon. That's not acceptable. So they seem to be struggling. It's like, okay, we bring business in. We got to get everybody in here. And this seems to have fueled this.
Netflix is going to invest $100 million in a New York City production hub. So what? They can get about a 2,000 square foot office?
Yeah, it's 6 sound stages. So, I mean... Well, a general movie studio like in Hollywood, they probably have a lot more than that, right? Yeah. But they do they do produce a couple of Netflix original series in New York already. So they probably rent production space for those. And they're going to create a certain number of jobs. Those jobs are the reason that New York is going to give them tax breaks and some cash. But the agreement is they must maintain those jobs.
Interesting.
So...
It'll be interesting to see how this develops as well. I mean, it could be Netflix could go the way of relatively, I don't want to say low budget because it's not low budget, but daytime television production where it's a little bit of a meat grinder, but it's very efficient in terms of use of actors' time. They'll, one set is used for 3 or 4 different TV shows.
I'm always amazed at how few days game show people work.
Yeah.
Because they'll do an entire month in 4 or 5 days. But that's got to be a brutal 4 or 5 days.
If only we could do that with the Level 1 news. We're going to shoot all the news in a 2-week period for the entire year.
That would be interesting to see what we predicted. And in other movie news, which should surprise absolutely no one, remember that business that was going to let you watch all the movies you wanted for a ridiculously low price per month? Well, they're not doing too well.
MoviePass has lost over 90% of its subscribers in less than a year, according to this report. So, MoviePass, yeah, they put all kinds of restrictions on it because people were just living at the movie theater. Turns out a lot of people that were on like fixed income or retired or didn't have a job were like, MoviePass, that sounds great. I will fill my hours with movies. And that was bad for their bottom line.
3 a month was the new rule, which is a big difference between 3 and infinite, or where you're constrained by time. How many movies do you think you could watch a month if you absolutely were just doing nothing else?
Around 100.
Probably, maybe more than that, because they do like the weird times sometimes, and then you could easily get 3 or 4 a day, I think. So yeah, a little over 100. Anyway. They went to 3, and they had like some blackout times, and you couldn't watch newer movies. Avengers Endgame, forget it. You're not watching it on MoviePass. Then they gave back the upgraded account, but it went to $15 a month, and again, there were all these weird restrictions. So they've lost at least 90%. Now, here's the other thing about it. They were trying to hide this because they were still counting the people, because when they went from unlimited to 3, you had to agree. And you had 3 options. You could to get all your money back. You could go to the 3, or you could upgrade to the other account. Everybody who just hadn't made a decision yet and were in limbo, they were counting as subscribers for their investors. So that's
something the SEC should look into and be like, nope, that's not how that works.
Well, I don't think that it's going to be blood from a stone, because they're going out of business. But yeah, too bad. If you were one of those people who was enjoying the movie lifestyle with MoviePass, feel bad for you. This story is, it seems inevitable. I think, right, of course, the headline here is they're not going to do it. But I cannot imagine a future where somebody chooses to go ahead with this.
Pepsi has dropped plans to use an orbital billboard. Yes, that's right. We've entered that period of our history where we can launch ads into space and have them orbit the planet.
So you see they're advertising Coca-Cola here. That's not real. That's an artist's rendition of what it would look like. But the idea is very reflective things put into space. So when it comes to nighttime and the sun hits that reflector, when it's not hitting your part of the Earth, you're going to see it.
It made it sound like there's a company that is deploying microsatellites with Mylar sails. And so these little microsatellites would reconfigure the sails to paint a logo or something in orbit.
Yeah, and it would affect somewhat limited geographical region. Yeah. You could probably see it other places, but you'd be looking at an angle. It might not make sense. Yeah. Although they could probably make the sales. Hell, you could do 2 different advertisements for 2 different places if you got the angle right. They're not going to do it. This was Pepsi that was thinking about doing that. They're not going to do it because somebody at Pepsi, this came across their desk, and that shakily they picked up the phone and they were like, "What are you thinking? People will crucify us for this." The interesting thing about it is, this was some forward thinking. Somebody in the government, for once. There are laws against this in the U.S. But this company, the Orbital Billboard Company, was going to launch from Russia. And what are you going to do about it? Space, bro.
Well, we had that... there was that company that was launching Pico satellites from California. They couldn't get a permit, so they had India do it, and then they just piloted it over to... Yeah. That did not end well for that company.
They did it. It turned out to be shitty. Yeah. You couldn't really see it that well. But this is the exact same idea, and like I said, Pepsi backed off because they're smart, and they knew that... I mean, you imagine Twitter.
Look at that in history. It's like Pepsi was the first company in history to advertise in space.
Yeah. But somebody who doesn't care... and, no such thing as bad press is going to do this.
Yeah. I wonder if NASA could sell advertising space on the space station.
They mentioned that that law does not affect logos. They said the shuttle and the boosters. I don't know about the space station. But you can we could NASCAR up to the shuttle.
I think we need to do that because, come on.
And here's something. If you're somebody who has a child who has ADHD and you're thinking, what can I do about it? Here's a new medical treatment that may sound a little archaic.
The FDA has okayed the first medical device to treat ADHD in children. It looks like some headgear strapped to a kid and they're playing a video game, but they've got to concentrate.
It's electrical shock. And actually, I don't know why they're using this picture, because it's while you sleep. You put this thing on your head, and so they estimate that the attention part of your brain is right up here. And so this thing is just going to gently stimulate that while you sleep.
Gently apply a corrective electric shock.
Pretty much. They've only done one study, but it looks promising based on the one study.
That's disturbing.
Yeah. Shocking, you might say.
That's worth an update right there.
If you've been on Steam, all the time, but it seems like they're getting more and more common these days, are like the hentai clicker sex games.
Not anymore.
Well, they will be on Steam. Where they won't be is on the Sony store.
Sony has clamped down on sexual content in PS4 games. It is worried about the potential to harm its reputation. So this is apparently a thing happening in Japan. Sexualization of the girls in video games. It talks about Devil May Cry 5.
That's just nothing new. What they're worried about is the Western sensibilities. Again, the Twitter storm that will come when some kid downloads hentai clicker from the Sony store.
But they even modified Devil May Cry 5, which is pretty mainstream.
Yeah. And there have been games that had female nudity as part of them. There's I remember Silent Hill. The Silent Hill games had like the naked, scary nurses.
Oh, yeah.
That was terrifying. I've been watching Penny Dreadful, and they have some like scary naked girls. Scary naked girls are like scary children, where it's like really effective because it's something that isn't scary, and it evokes other emotions, but then it's scary, and your mind's just like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. So yeah, they pointed out Devil May Cry 5 and some other game where they had to use lens flares.
Yeah.
To lens flare out like a nipple or something.
That's crazy.
So yeah. Kind of going the YouTube route there.
Super paranoid about every little thing. So it's overcompensation in the other direction.
In a world where it seems like it's interesting because in our day, being into programming and computers was very much not cool.
No.
Very much the opposite. Maybe perhaps as far as you could get on the spectrum. But these days, people kind of, carry that as a badge of honor. Like sometimes, remember the one girl who, she Instagrammed something and she was like, oh, working hard on my code. And it was just the worst Python code that you've ever seen. And people tore her apart. She's like, it wasn't even real. I was just practicing. But anyway, it's become something that people want to be identified as. Mm-hmm. And they want to be more mainstream with it. And it's like, I think this may be a child of that.
Microsoft has debuted BOSC, a new programming language with no loops that's been inspired by TypeScript. So it's about mutability and, that kind of stuff. So they're trying to do away with loops, and maybe it's going to be easier to program because you can't mutate something.
I couldn't get my head around it. Like I'd have to go and look at some examples, but
yeah,
it's like the first time you looked at Lisp. Like, what?
There's a lot of parentheses here. I mean, man, if everybody adopted Lisp, there would be a worldwide parenthesis shortage.
I don't think Lisp is going to make programming more accessible to the masses. Maybe, though. And I was just talking to somebody the other day who's looking to build a NAS. And it's like, he's like, I want to get some hard drives. And you look at the deal sites, and they are just basically giving them away. How many terabytes you want, bro? And this seems to confirm that.
Trend Focus, Tom's Hardware, says that HDD shipments have fell to 77 million in the first quarter of 2019. Nobody wants spinning Rust anymore, because why would you?
Because it's super cheap.
But it's just, SSDs have gotten super cheap as well. I mean, you get a 1 terabyte drive for around $100, give or take, and 2 terabytes is within reach. 4 terabytes is not insanely expensive, but yeah, mechanical hard drives are pushing 8, 10, 12 terabytes, and the people that are buying them are the people that need massive amounts of storage. But gone are the days, I think, of adding a mechanical hard drive to your machine for game storage, because a 1 terabyte, even a slow, quote unquote slow 1 terabyte SSD, $150 at the most.
I got one for $85.
Yeah,
that was a Samsung too, not the Evo, but the one down from the Evo.
Oh yeah,
A terabyte for 85.
with the OEM Samsung. Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to turn that down?
Yeah, I mean, just like you will save that if your time is worth more than $1 an hour. You will make that cost differential up by not having to wait on your machine.
But if you are building the NAS and you want, 12 terabytes, now's the time. Now's the time to strike. Just clicking through on.
I am excited by the $100 8 terabyte like WD Reds for like $125. That is actually very exciting because maybe we can upgrade the level 1 video storage server. It's exciting times.
NBC News, they'll give you the non-ad block version, but you got to click for it. And now we enter into the social media block, which is all Facebook except one story. And this one is somewhat damning. When you talk earlier, we talked about like them putting Zuckerberg in jail and trying to protect him from that. This is what I was talking about with that is because you asked something about like, is jail really fair, or can we really blame him for what Facebook is? We can't blame him necessarily for people abusing it and getting addicted to it and all that. But then you read something like this.
Mark Zuckerberg leveraged Facebook user data to fight rivals and help friends, leaked documents show. So what they're talking about, what Ryan's talking about, is there are emails on record now of Mark Zuckerberg literally saying, hey, this guy at this company, he's a good guy, and they've got a lot of data. Why don't we share all of our data with him, and maybe he'll give us some of his data? And then other people that were kind of competing with Facebook or having some more stuff is like, no, we're not going to give them any user data. Totally seeing the users as cattle. Like there was no respect. There was no like considering. It's like, oh, maybe we should think about this before user privacy. No, it was, these are cattle to be slaughtered. This is how this works.
There was also discussion of directly selling data for money. Now that's something that Facebook has never done, as far as we know.
No,
but
they considered it.
It was floated, which, and I think he said in public a bunch of times, especially with the Cambridge Analytica stuff, he was like, hey, all these newspaper articles are coming out talking about we're selling data. We don't sell data. He was doing like the white girl clap. It's like, we don't sell data. But that's true, they don't. But it was on the table. It wasn't as cut and dry as he makes it sound.
I was picturing something a little different in my head. It was like, you ever read one of those nonfiction books that talks about like the serial killer, and it's like the account of the child psychologist, where like the child psychologist is recounting like their first interview with the kid, and the child psychologist presents a hypothetical situation, and the kid is like, oh well, that's an easy situation to solve, just kill so and so, and it's just very cold and very cut and dry. That's how I've sort of read some of the stuff that Zuckerberg was talking about. It's like, oh, we need money for this or whatever. Yeah, it's cool, just sell the user's data, it's fine. And then later, the reason they didn't sell user data is because somebody was like, well, now Mark, we can't murder people, we can't just go around indiscriminately murdering people, that's not okay. He's like, oh, that's not okay. Oh,
but see, I doubt it was even that. I bet the thing that stopped him was when they crunched the numbers, the data was worth more, not selling it directly for money, which is probably true, right?
Oh man, he's worth more to us alive than dead. Well, I guess he gets to live.
And how is that data valuable, you ask? Like, what are you going to do with it? How do you monetize it? Well, maybe you look at something that's already on the market and you say, based on the things we know about people, we can make a better version of that.
Facebook is working on a voice assistant to rival Amazon Alexa and Apple Siri. Gosh, talking to Facebook as a disembodied AI. There is not a more dystopian level 1 headline.
Of course, the image is him. Yeah. I think they're too smart to use him as the face of it. But yeah, that would be so unsettling.
the Mark AI. It's like, hey Mark, I would like to crush my rivals and build my empire. Sure thing. I'll be glad to help you with that.
Dr. Z. Dr. Z, what's the weather today? So yeah, they have what's the name of their Alexa thing that they've got? The one with the camera.
Oh, Facebook Home or something?
That's not Home. They mentioned it here. But anyway, they got their little thing that is in your house, and we assume that's what they're going to load this thing into. Of course, they would also put it on your phone, on the Facebook app and everything. And they don't really say what it would... Portal, that's the name of it. They don't really say what it would do that the others don't, but you have to assume if they can tie it into your social circle, that would attract some people.
We need all of your data to protect you from all of the other services having all of your data. It's like, I'm not sure that's how that works. Yeah.
I'm going to protect your money, so just put it in this bag and give it to me. That's what's going to happen. Then we talked about the leak. Facebook had the new leak. Was that last week or the week before?
It's for the last 3 weeks.
But this one that they were talking about,
The logs. We originally covered that 3 weeks ago.
So it turns out after they started looking into that, they found a little something more. But actually, I think we're 2 stories about this. I won't say the part yet.
So the first part is Facebook has unintentionally uploaded email contacts from 1.5 million users. So this was, if Facebook has built as I understand it, I might not be, because it's sort of, I don't think this CNET article got all the details exactly right, but from my understanding of it, was that if Facebook built a shadow profile of you, meaning that your friends had submitted some data about you and that kind of thing, Facebook already knew your email address, but you didn't have a quote-unquote official Facebook account. If you then tried to sign up with Facebook, it would be like, okay, well, we've got you on file, but since you don't have an account, we need you to prove who you are because we don't want rogues taking over your stuff. So why don't you give us your password for your email account? Then we will log on to your email, which we know is yours from all your friends, and make sure it's okay. But when you did that, Facebook would scrape all of the stuff from your email provider. Oops.
And it's not, they weren't even hiding it. A little window popped up that was like, importing your contacts. So clearly they had built that OAuth to import your contacts.
Yeah.
And then someone was like, well, we already have that. Let's just use that again. But they left that part in. Intentionally? Probably. I got this completely wrong. That's a new thing. I was talking about the leak, which is actually from the next story, because they leaked a bunch of passwords. That was very embarrassing for them. But when they started looking into it internally, they found something more. But they didn't tell anybody until now. Why would they wait?
This is the thing from 3 weeks ago. Facebook has waited until the Mueller report dropped in order to tell us that millions of Instagram passwords were exposed. Now, remember when we first reported this 3 weeks ago that Facebook said that this logging of plain text passwords was an internal system, only developers had access to it, it was very limited in scope, maybe a few thousand people, and then the data showed up on Amazon S3, and then now it's millions of users, and Instagram users are also affected. We've gone from like a thimble-sized amount of data to a small moon-sized amount of data.
And, of course, the Mueller report, everybody. I read it. I still don't understand it. All I know is both sides are completely convinced that they were right all along based on the outcome of it. But it captured the world's imagination. Everybody was looking into it, and you just slide this under the rug.
I heard that he was going to put the full unredacted report up on Patreon because I, too, struggled to understand what the heck was going on.
On our Patreon? Is that what you're saying? That's not true. That's false advertising.
No, it's Mueller's, no, I don't know. He's got a no, he doesn't have a Patreon. I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah, that's
in before correction.
We won't go into that because there's no way you can satisfy everybody talking about that, and I'm so out of touch.
The timing there though is really like, oh, that's a coincidence that it's timed that way. No, that was deliberate. Facebook, like that was 3 weeks ago. Facebook has been sitting on that for 3 weeks. You can't tell me that the tech team took 3 weeks to figure that out. They knew,
and we knew
they knew, and we knew that they knew.
We knew, was it Friday before last they announced that it was going to be the following Thursday?
Yeah.
So they had a pretty good window where they're like, oh, okay, we'll do it that day.
Yeah.
So
they didn't.
Smart, but evil, which, that's Facebook, right?
Speaking of smart but evil.
And a non-Facebook story, the only one in the social media section. This one has to do with Twitter.
Starz goes on a Twitter Meta-Censorship spree to cover up TV show leaks. So they censored the EFF and Torrent Freak, or they issued DMCA takedown notices, which had the effect of censorship for Torrent Freak and the EFF, reporting that someone had leaked a bunch of TV shows like American Gods that had not been released or published yet. And the reason for that is because they included screenshots from the TV shows that hadn't been released yet. And that's clear overreach. So
the first Torrent Freak tweet had one frame of each show, maybe? Okay, maybe that's copyright. That's proof. Maybe. EFF's tweet did not. It had a logo, I think, for one of the shows, but it wasn't part of the leaked document. Also, in neither case were there any links whatsoever to the copyright material. There was no link to like, here, go download it from here. It was literally, hey, they had a leak. Lol. And when you fill out a DMCA, there's all these fields you got to fill out because it's a legal document, and the EFF gets a copy of theirs. So they noted that in the DMCA, the reason for the takedown was links to bootleg. And then there's another field for provide the links that were the links that you're complaining about, and they just put not applicable.
Yeah. That is deliberately in bad faith.
And you have to swear. You have to swear in testimony that the DMCA is true when you issue it. So
this is a preview of the adventures you guys in the UK are going to have, because in the last episode we talked about the whole link tax thing and all that stuff. Like, the DMCA is awful. It is a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. The stuff that's happening in the EU makes it look reasonable by comparison. So this is a microcosm of your future in the UK, and probably our own future as well, because once it's working in the EU, it'll work everywhere.
But it's going to be way more disturbing in the EU because what's going to happen is this will never happen, because this will happen like 2-3 times, and then the companies just get so scared they begin to filter this on their own.
Yeah. Nobody is allowed to talk to anybody else.
Yeah,
we never have any non-official content.
We won't ever even hear about it. It'll just be silent oppression and no pornography. What kind of world is that?
There's no pornography in the UK. That hasn't made its way to the EU
It will.
yet, but it will.
You wait.
Yeah. Australia. It's surprising, though. I'm surprised that didn't happen in Australia first, because Australia is usually where they try the crazy stuff, and it's like, wow, we got away with it in Australia. Let's try it in Europe.
Isn't Australia kind of famously cavalier about sexual stuff?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they have that. That whole, like, British morality repression, I don't think that's a thing in Australia.
I wonder if that's because, like, any little thing could kill you in Australia. Like, they're just happy to be alive another day.
They want to get those kids breeding as quickly as possible because of the short lifespan due to the fauna.
Environmental threats. All right, we'll see you Friday.
Friday will be robots, a little bit of science. We won't do design because Chris put design stories in there, and then she did show up because of the edibles. And, of course, nonsense. So, look forward to that.
It's Friday, April 26th. We've got a bunch of nonsense, a little bit of robot.
A little bit of science. And it's going to be kind of a short one. I think we might have gotten the mixture wrong a little bit this week. But, hey, It's nonsense day. Nothing matters, right? It's the end of the week. You got through it. Just go home and drink.
The hilarious misapplications of technology, as brought to you by Level 1.
But first, I don't know if you would call this a misapplication. Equal parts terrifying and brilliant, I guess you would say.
Boston Dynamics Spot Mini, their little robot, performs a terrifying new feat of strength. I don't know if it's terrifying as it is cute.
But yeah, well, you got to watch the video and you got to listen to it with sound. Like, don't just watch this.
Yeah.
Because the sound that's happening right now really sets it off. There they come. The Boston Dynamics, one of the things they do really well is they don't narrate these and they don't put a bunch of crap around them. They're very simple. They're short. They're to the point, but they are very, very entertaining.
We could learn a lot from these people.
There it is. There's the truck. Now, my question, do you think these little guys have internal batteries or is there power coming out of there?
No, they have internal batteries.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. I want to be the guy in the truck, though. The guy in the truck is just, it's like on Dasher, on Prancer, on Datsun, on, I don't know the range.
But he's just shouting out serial numbers. This long, complicated serial numbers.
You're not pulling your weight, 37A. You really need to pick up the slack.
So, yeah. What they're announcing here is these little guys are going on sale. You're going to be able to buy them, and they're showing off the strength that can pull that truck. If you
Level 1 fundraiser? No.
Also interesting that the first two, if you notice, had little heads.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess they have some sort of autonomy in terms of avoiding things.
So directing the others, maybe.
And the rest of them are just slaves. What's the politically correct term for slave now? In electronics? I can't remember it. Whatever it is, pretend I said that instead. But, yeah, I was impressed how much traction their little nubs got, because they don't really have feet.
Well, they're working together. And that truck is on a slight incline, too. It doesn't look like much of an incline from the video, but it is actually on a slight incline. So they're pulling that thing uphill.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to replace sled dogs anytime soon, but I'm sure somebody will find a useful...
Fun to imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, all we need to do is put like a little weapon on top of those. And
Well, no. Have them pulling the mortar.
just walk it,
And then have one of those other, like the humanoid Boston Robotics robots working the mortar back there. No problem, right?
What a time to be alive.
Or dead, as it turns out, once they're in use. This is nothing new when you think about Japan has been doing this for years. Didn't China have one of these?
Yes.
Theirs aren't really robots, they're just rendered. But I think Japan had a robot.
I think Disney's got like 50 in the Hall of Presidents.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They've got that horrible Donald Trump that started out as Hillary Clinton. But the Russian one, maybe not up to those standards.
The robot news presenter causes a stir on Russian TV. So I've got the picture. No, that's the robot, but I've got the picture.
You want to see the comparison?
Yeah. Because it's like, okay. It's like clearly something is wrong.
Well, some people like it. Most people don't seem to like it. And they've pointed out that they've complained that he may be drinking the robot.
He also may be shouting state propaganda, I think was one of the quotes that I saw.
Is it most of the Russian news? I mean, do you want to stay on the air?
Do you want the Level 1 news to be available in Russia? You need to hush, comrade. You need to hush.
But yeah, that's got some tweets. Oh, maybe it was a different article, but they have some tweets that pointed out people not crazy about him.
But he can work tirelessly from now till the end of time. I could get behind, like my evening newscast being read by George Washington.
I mean, they're basically already robots, right? Let's be honest.
Oh, that Sinclair video where all of the people were saying everything with the exact same intonation. Yeah.
It's not like they're not reading a script.
Yeah.
So why not? Skip the middleman.
It's so true. I hadn't thought of that, but now I'm very depressed.
And speaking of AI, no, we weren't speaking of AI. Transitioning into AI, that's the phrase I was looking for. Some AI is being used to breathe new life into our video game favorites.
Artificial intelligence is helping old video games look like new. And there's a lot of cool stuff here. They've got screenshots of Doom and that kind of thing. So yeah.
There's a pretty good comparison. It looks pretty jaggy. And the big problem these days, first world problems, is you're playing some of these old classic games. You're emulating, maybe playing some console games. Or actually, I think emulation accounts for it. But if you plug an actual old console into a current TV, the delay makes it almost impossible to play. And similar things, Super Nintendo had this amazing, like, fluid-looking animation engine. Doesn't work with modern TVs.
Yeah.
So this looks to fix that with the good old discriminator AI. Actually just tries over and over. And what do you call that? The other one, not the discriminator.
Iterative?
There's a name, yes, but there's a name for the other AI that works against
Procedural?
I don't remember. Anyway, one of them is like, hey, I think this demon looks pretty good for modern rendering at this resolution. And the discriminator's like, nope, try again. And it just does it over and over. And some more examples they had.
This one looks the same far away, but,
but look at the eye.
If you zoom in, it's like, oh, wow.
Look right there.
Yeah.
That's huge difference. And then the blood up here.
Yeah. They've done really well. I mean, AI has come a long way. The time that it takes to remaster is going to be less. And there's actually a game company. Yeah, this one is really impressive too. Look at the detail that they were able to bring out of that. It's not merely just upscaling, but they're actually adding detail to the scene.
Now, they do point out that this is not automatic. This gets you maybe 80% of the way there, but that last 20 is the labor-intensive, like, cleaning up pixels part. It's kind of like, the magic tool in Photoshop, where, it'll get a rough approximation, but you're going to have to go in and clean up those edges. That kind of thing.
I'd love to see somebody remaster the LucasArts adventure games with this, because I bet that would be really interesting.
Well, those are all sprites, right? So I'm sure that would be pretty easy to do. The way this thing works is it works on games that use texture packs too. So you just take the whole texture pack and go through one at a time and update them, feed it back in, and the game runs with the new texture pack. Pretty cool. YouTube, once again, talking about AI, we all know that YouTube uses AI to demonetize everybody's videos and ruin YouTube, right?
Crush dissidents and make sure that you've seen the latest clickbait, whatever.
But it also uses that to try and target controversial things. And one of the most controversial things on YouTube is the 9/11 conspiracy, right? And you would think that maybe it looks at titles and descriptions, maybe even comments, but could it be looking at the video itself? This would make you think that it is.
Bloomberg has this really amazing article. YouTube is flagging Notre-Dame fire videos as 9/11 conspiracy, and YouTube has YouTube spokespeople popped up and said, "Oh, the automated system has made the wrong call. Whoops,
We've reached the free article limit."
Oh no! It's just like it seems to be like smoke on sky. Like,
well, it was a big fireball.
Yeah,
and it does look a lot like those images of 9/11.
That's a scary time.
So the YouTube AI is looking at the video and it's like, oh, I recognize that. That's the Twin Towers. Flag it.
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah, that's shocking.
Future historians are going to look back and weep for this time.
Now, here's a Krista article, and this is cool, but I don't know what fascinated her about this.
NASA's Cassini probe has discovered deep lakes on Saturn's moon Titan. These are methane lakes, and so like the lakes can be up to 100 meters deep. At least that's what the instrumentation on the probe shows. And the lakes will appear in some places and then disappear in other places, which suggests there's a lot of activity going on the moon, like geological activity of some kind, because something is replenishing the methane or moving it around or something. And the deep fissures may have been caused by like ice lakes or comets melting or something.
Yeah, I think that's the news, is it probably had some sort of liquid water at some point, because you wouldn't expect methane to create lakes.
Yeah. Just
the fact that it's basically made out of methane, that's why they're methane lakes now. Just had some holes, methane decided to fill those holes. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool although it also is kind of depressing, maybe, when you think about what we're learning about Mars and now Saturn, of once there was life-sustaining conditions on these planets, but now not anymore. Is that our future?
Yeah, climate change? I don't know.
Well, I don't know if that's good. Climate change, yes. Man-made climate change, I don't think... Well, of course, there could have been advanced civilizations on Saturn. Who are we to say?
I don't know. Can we use the materials from Titan to jumpstart the stuff on Mars? Because I could be all about terraforming Mars.
We could probably use it for fuel. I don't know how volatile or cheap that would be to transport.
We need to get the Boston Dynamics people. It's like, we need robots to terraform Mars. How long is it going to take? What's it going to cost?
You made the comparison to the reindeer. What if they could make space reindeer?
Boston Dynamics, that's your next $1 billion idea.
We'll just drag Saturn over to Mars. This is not much of a story. Really, this GIF, and yes, I said GIF, is the whole reason I included it, because it's amazing.
So these are rats in a zero-gravity environment, and they are just going nuts.
They talk about how the headline is NASA sent mice into space, and the results are unintentionally hilarious. Yeah, I wish there was more of a video, because clearly there's a longer video, right?
Yeah.
But I couldn't find it anywhere. But the idea was, at first, they were terrified. And you might imagine. Gravity goes away, you're a mouse, things are getting weird. But it took them very little time to go from freaked out to this. Doing loops around the cage.
I wonder if the one is doing loops such that he's experiencing his own artificial gravity.
Think that's just like a coping mechanism?
It's like, oh, I've got gravity again because I'm running in a rough circle around my cage.
But yeah, they are fascinating little guys. I don't know if they all made it back home alive. I like to think that they did.
They were jettisoned in an airlock because they weren't worth bringing back.
Maybe too much weight. Those extra ounces. Now, we all heard the tragic news about Notre-Dame this week, or I guess that was last week, or it was Friday. Burning down, or burning severely, at least. And it turns out that they didn't exactly have like the best architectural plans for it. You would think that would be one of the most studied pieces of architecture in the world, but it makes it seem like maybe very few places have it. But a silver lining.
Assassin's Creed could save Notre-Dame, whatever. Fire may have destroyed parts of Notre Dame, but there is still hope. So it talks about the spire, how the spire was originally reconstructed in the late 1800s. There was a major reconstruction in the 1790s. It's going to be rebuilt again, but I mean, it was built over like 200 years, and the building techniques actually changed as it was being built because earlier parts of the structure are built in ways, or later parts of the structure are built in ways that would have been impossible for some of the earlier parts that were built in terms of like load-bearing stone and structural support and that sort of thing.
That's the whole story about the Masons, right? Like they had those techniques, and that's why they were so powerful. The article kind of ends up, it's like, yeah, it's going to be Assassin's Creed because that's an amazing headline. Oh, but there's this other guy who did like laser surveys and has an incredible, they got a picture of it down here, I think. Yeah, some guy did this, and it wasn't Assassin's Creed. But, you know, hey.
This millimeter accuracy scans, we can put it back exactly the way that it was.
And I believe, just to correct you, I believe you can call the one here Notre-Dame, but over there it is Notre-Dame.
Yeah.
So somebody's going to correct you on that.
That's fine. I'm a hick American anyway. It's fine.
This has nothing to do with technology, but sometimes in a search for these stories, you find one that's just so entitled and horrible, and we have a couple of these a week, that you have to put it in, right?
Dunstable mom's anger, misleading alphabets, can't spell son's name. Ikgen?
Now, I won't blame you if you don't use mum, because I hate that.
Well, she seemed to be... So, this is apparently a potato snack.
That's French fries, yeah.
And she wants the entire alphabet to be in every bag.
Right, and it turns out that on the bag, there is a warning that says, this isn't the entire alphabet. We make a big giant batch of these and they go in randomly. So if you really need the entire alphabet, buy 2 or 3 bags. But she says it's not prevalent enough, and it's so crippling. I think her son had maybe some developmental issues. And the fact that it wasn't his name really set him off.
Is it a problem, though, because, like, even if there were bags that contain the entire alphabet, like, for me, I would have to buy 2 bags.
That's true, yeah. But her special snowflake doesn't have repeating letters. So
he has special privileges? Or is that where are we entering a time where we need to legislate so that people that only use one letter in a particular letter in their name they have, like, more ability to have edible fries? I don't know what.
Well, she clearly chose a superior name than your mother. So don't complain. There she is. You can imagine. And some of her quotes, I don't know if I can grab them real quick, but
the Tesco response I thought was pretty funny. I'm sorry that you did not have the correct letters in your pack of Tesco potato alphabet letters. I understand that you were disappointed with the range of letters that you had. The bags are packed with a random selection of letters, and we don't state which letters are in what bags.
Her quote was, obviously the person who made these from Tesco can't have children. Because they would understand. It's
yet another story where future historians are going to look back and weep on current society.
And the list of those goes on. Now, this one may be tangentially related to technology, because I imagine some of this was digital, although they don't make it clear.
Man is suing his parents for getting rid of his vast porn collection. So, apparently, this guy was getting a divorce.
No, he was divorced and had moved back in.
Oh, okay. And then he moved somewhere else, but they didn't send all of his stuff. They left this out, so he's suing his parents.
He claims it was $49,000 worth of, or no, $29,000 worth of porn, and they were good enough to point out 2 of the titles.
Frisky Business and Big Bad Grannies. Wow.
Imagine you have a child who's moved back into your home as an adult, and you're packing up his stuff. And you come across Big Bad Grannies.
Just like, nope.
The parents say they did him a favor getting rid of those because it was repulsive and it shouldn't be part of his life. He argues that they did $29,000 worth of damages. He is seeking triple damages in his court case for a total of $87,000.
He did already report the thing to the police. The prosecutor declined to prosecute.
Do you think they'll ever invite him back into the home? Should another marriage go awry?
No, I don't think so. But good Lord. I mean, good Lord.
Well, speaking of pigs, major scientific breakthrough when it comes to the brain of swine.
Scientists restore some function in the brains of dead pigs. So this is not consciousness. There was no organized firing pattern, because that's what I was excited about. I was like, oh, they've reanimated pig.
Oh,
No.
you wanted zombie pigs?
Yeah. I mean, I could go for some zombie pork. That's probably pretty good. It's definitely not kosher.
It's going to die again once you kill it. Or are we going to keep the pig alive as we butcher it?
Yeah.
So it's just
Fresher.
like a quarter of a pig suffering.
That might make it actually to where that you could have clean pork.
Isn't it adrenaline, though, would
That's true.
counter that? Yeah, I don't think
Makes
they
it
want
like
that.
tough and not good. That's probably bad. This is not really like brain function. They just were able to restore some function in some of the neural. I mean, the neurons need oxygen, so this is kind of a big deal that they're able to get some functionality out of neurons that have been deprived of oxygen for a long time. But it's still not. It doesn't. It maybe gets us a little closer to research that will let people recover from a situation where they don't have oxygen, but probably not.
But the other thing was, you're not able to get a lot of diagnostic information from a dead brain because it breaks down so quickly. But if you could quickly apply this to a corpse, then you might be able to, in the instance of, for example, those NFL players who have that brain injury issue. You want to study those brains? Doing something like this could make that a lot more feasible to do after death. So,
this is one to follow.
but
Also, make sure these scientists are on a list.
because that is as far. Okay, so we talk a lot about AI, and I think that our current AI is as far from Terminator as this is to reanimating corpses, but it's a stepping stone.
It is.
And it's a terrifying one.
How long until we can, have the disembodied brain in a jar? It's like we're using that as a computational device because it's very power efficient.
That's what this was. They actually did. They discarded the rest of the pig and jarred the brains, and that's how they did this. So, why not? Here's a story that I didn't realize this. Did you know that China has their own version of Minecraft that's not Microsoft's version?
I did not realize that.
Yeah, and what do they do when they have their own version of something?
They have censored it. They've censored. Censors have targeted Minecraft, and it's because they said it contains porn.
And
But it doesn't. It doesn't.
Not just porn, but they talked about groups of people who were trading links on there or trying to talk to children when maybe they shouldn't.
Suspected vulgar and pornographic violations. What is this story?
Yeah, it makes no sense because nothing in Minecraft. I thought, remember the Lego game? They did like a Lego online. Because I've always thought to myself, why don't they just take the Minecraft style game and do Legos? Well, they did that. And they literally had a team that was dedicated to trying to get rid of all the penises. So I expected something like that here, but no. It was just communicating with other humans in the game set off these Chinese censors.
That is not allowed.
Yeah. But
That needs to be controlled. This is perhaps a word of warning for the people in the EU with the whole link tax thing, because you need the same kind of machinery to implement that.
now, one thing that they pointed out, they talked to some like avid Minecraft players, maybe some streamers in China, and all of them said, why would you play the Chinese version? Just play the Microsoft version. The Chinese version is garbage, and maybe that's why all the creeps are there. Yeah, so.
Well, do you think the censors are trying to block the Microsoft version in order to get people to play the Chinese version?
That's a good question. I don't know. Now, we don't usually just put YouTube videos. There was an article for this, but I swear when I looked at it last week sometime when I put it in there, there was no paywall. But today, paywall. And maybe just because this video is incredible and they're getting a lot of traffic and they're like, oh, we better do something about this. But here's a dress, and there's really, I mean, you can't read it anyway because I don't think you read that language. I certainly don't. But the video will speak for itself. This lovely young lady. And wait for it.
No. What's happening?
This is taking... Oh, there you go.
It's transparent. What's going on? Yeah, no.
And YouTube immediately suggests more bikini photos. No. Good job, YouTube algorithm. Oops.
That's the next story. So it's a dress that you can turn transparent at a moment's notice.
Now, here's the question.
Why would you do that?
Is when you are out of battery power, is the default mode transparent or opaque?
What a way to live dangerously.
Yeah. So that would be funny if, like, imagine you get so if you have an old tablet or an old phone, you get to that point where if it's not plugged in, it just dies. And some girl is tethered to a wall, calling for help. It's like, I can't walk away from this outlet.
Bring me a battery pack. You can also toggle the level of transparency. So you can have it be a little bit transparent.
It seemed like it was a different video because the one I saw on the story, it was a very slow transition. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so. You go feeling cute today? Dial it down a little bit. A few more transparent pixels in there. Too bad Chris is not here because she would have a
field day.
A visceral reaction to that one. And you might have already seen the headline for this one, but it's about attention spans. And
you definitely saw the headline if your attention span was narrowing after the dress article. So it's global attention span is narrowing, and the trends don't last as long, as studies revealed. So it used to be that in the 70s, like, the people saw the Beatles, and then that was the style for a decade. And now it's the style for about 15 minutes.
I think they said big news items, like the Notre-Dame fire, for example, you get something like 7 hours.
Wow.
And then
no one cares.
The global mindset has moved on, which definitely makes sense.
And that's advantageous. I mean, if we look at all the stuff that we're trying to cover with, like, the dismantling of the internet as we know it, and Ajit Pai's evilness, and communications companies corrupting everything, and Facebook's, the walls closing in on Facebook, that's really, like, all those things. There's more and more information every week that is even more blockbuster than the previous week, and no one cares.
But I would say that's disadvantageous for a functioning society.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Advantageous for the monsters.
Yes.
But that, we talked about Facebook timing the Mueller report for their extra leak. And
done deliberately.
They show this is exactly what they understand. And I would say Facebook, with all that Facebook data, understands it even more than these guys do who are studying it. They know exactly how information flows and what people, like when they'll forget about it.
Have you ever noticed the corporations release all their bad news on a Friday because nobody cares about the weekend news cycle?
Listen.
By Monday, it's like no one cares. It's old news.
We got better things to do. We got 420 festivals to go to. And they also talk about, as a society, we get this, but also individual attention spans.
Yeah.
Tragically short. So I wish I could feel superior to this, but I can't because I'm at that point where it's hard for me to just sit down and watch television because I want to be doing something else at the same time. Like, let me half size this window and go and browse something else during the boring scenes.
I'm looking at this amazing production where every frame is a painting, and it's like the producer has put a lot of work into this, and it's like, I just don't care.
I'm literally paying money to see it, but I'm slightly bored by this scene, so I want to go see something else. That's a terrible way to live, but we've done it to ourselves. And finally, I think we might have talked about this, because this data set, it goes back to 2008, and I think we talked about this before. I think someone had an app where you could report these, was the previous story, maybe like a year ago. But now there's this new place that's putting all these numbers together, and it makes for a shocking Google map.
Mapping San Francisco's human waste challenge: 132,652 cases reported reported in the public way since 2008. This is people using the bathroom in public.
Oh. And that brown pen color was chosen on purpose. Look, it's really dense in here. I wonder which area of San Francisco this is.
So this is...
Oh, that's not an actual Google embed. Oh, come on, Forbes.
When we first reported this, I was thinking, maybe this is just like 2 or 3 really terrible people. But after seeing this map, it's like...
No, there are good documentaries about...
We must purge the area with nuclear weapons.
No, some great YouTube documentaries about San Francisco. And they have... it's all of these liberal cities where they've kind of decriminalized life on the street and, public drug abuse and stuff like that. And so people just do with impunity. They just live there and they're shooting up in front of the tourists and crapping on the street. And they're saying that it's a waste of time to prosecute these, marginalized people with these petty crimes. So it's just kind of a free-for-all.
But it seems like if the situation has gotten so bad that you just poop in the street, that you should just have, like, there's somewhere they should go for that, like a public toilet.
Oh, they are...
Or a shelter or something.
Well, they're maxed out. And they're... Because it is sort of a sanctuary for drug abuse, then you attract more and more. Plus, the climate is incredible. It's San Francisco.
Yeah.
You know? So, hey...
You can sleep outside. It's totally fine.
Nice weather, a lot of social programs. You don't get busted for drugs. Why not? Right?
It leads to this.
And I've also... And
this is a net loss.
I can't confirm any of this, but I've also seen some, like conspiracy documentaries where the San Francisco government, a lot of those people are operating NGOs that do like the porta potties and the temporary housing and the cleanup crews. So they're making a ton of money, just like not fixing the problem, but curing the symptoms every day.
What a vicious cycle.
I don't think it's as much of a cycle as a bubble that's inflating.
Yeah.
And who knows when that's going to pop.
When it pops, it's going to make a terrible mess.
That's going to smell terrible.
An app for reporting human poop. Who would have guessed?
Smart. People are constantly sitting around thinking, what? I need to make an app. I need the next great app. And that person was a genius.
We need to reanimate Washington and Jefferson and those guys using the pig technology, if at all possible, and show them this and just ask, what do we do?
and they'd say something really racist. Also, the worst possible zombie would be like a really charismatic leader zombie. Because he's going to get on YouTube. Can you imagine George Washington with a YouTube account and he's reanimated and he's evil? That would be a great TV show, actually.
I don't think that would be a lot different from what we already have. Like, how much worse could it be?
Oh, yeah, but Trump's not that charismatic.
Well, no, I'm thinking about like 2020, where it's like, is Zuckerberg going to make a run at the presidency? Is that?
Oh, man. I always look down on these people with Bush and with Trump who are like, I'm leaving the country if he gets elected, but I'd have to consider it with Zuckerberg, right?
Is Canada a haven? Does Canada have a poop app? Can we get a poop app preview of what's going on in Canada before, so that we know, is the grass greener on the other side? Is that a thing? Wait, I guess the grass would be greener because of all the fertilization.
It's white because it's snow. It's buried under snow. I don't know, but
that's enough nonsense.
Let's hope we never have to think about that, because
it's an app for tracking human poop. That's what it is. I can't get past that.
Listen, if I started seeing poop, I would download that app, wouldn't you? Because I would want
a record. It's
yeah.
Like, I'm outraged. I'm going to take a picture using this app.
You know what we need to do? We need to somehow build this into an augmented reality game like Pokemon.
You're currently standing where there was a pile of crap less than 24 hours ago.
You can capture poop monsters, but only when you photograph, fresh scenes. You have to be the first one to it. But then that would be like when the British offered a bounty on cobras in India.
And they just started breeding cobras.
People just be taking dumps in the street, and it's like, I gotta collect them all.
This seems like that's turned out about as well. So,
you think there's ever been a person who reported their own poop?
Probably, yeah.
Well,
people are terrible. We'll see you next week.